Thanks. Given how many of you there are, I think it's easier for us, at least for me, to ask questions of each of you when you speak instead of, because by the time they get down there, I won't remember what you said. I have a question about, in the Central Valley full build slide, about the more efficient cost per mile and improved cost recovery from fare revenues part. So is part of your analysis about kind of the full build, you don't have to put it up there, it's not that important, putting that up. The full build being the sort of preferred situation here, is that based on the finding, based on the cost not increasing on that? What happens if, as we build, the costs go up, if it's not exactly what we think it's going to be at this moment, if, as costs often do on large projects, there are cost overruns? How does that change the analysis?
Well, when we did our analysis, we have to use the data that's presented now. I mean, the data could change for us. Obviously, it has changed in the history of the project, but we had to kind of draw a line and say, okay, this is what we know. Otherwise, we start getting into multiple scenarios.
I understand that, but let's assume that the costs go up. Let's assume that, as they have for the entire history of this project, the costs continue to rise. Doesn't that then change your bottom line of you deciding that that one of the reasons that this is the preferred option because of that cost analysis? If the costs go up, that might not make, you might change your recommendation of this being the preferred alternative, correct?
I think if the costs go up, we would have to relook at it and recalculate it for sure.
And then my other question is, you have a line that says, early high-speed rail services create significant value. Can you explain why? What is the value of that?
Again, in the qualitative standpoint, we're looking at the value of proving that it can be done. So as
well, wait a minute. High-speed rail has been done all over the world. I mean, nobody is saying you can't run a train at 200 miles an hour.
In the state of California.
But what's the value of that?
I think it's changing culture. It's changing the mindset of the citizens along the corridor, but also of potential investors.
See, I actually disagree with you. I think that there's only one way to prove value, and that's ridership.
Yes.
The only value you have, it's not proving you can run a train at 200 miles an hour. We all know you can build a train that runs 200 miles an hour. It's old technology around the world. It's sort of a given in other parts of the world. So we know we can do that. The only way you prove value is if you increase ridership. Otherwise, it's all, I mean, what else? What's the other purpose? It's increasing ridership. And so I'm sorry, I understand that this hearing is not on your, this just popped up, You weren't doing your analysis for this. But what we need to see is the ridership analysis.
And that's coming.
And what's missing from all of these is that you have very different population centers and very different need for mass transit in all of these different areas. And even with the best, most convenient service in the world, you still have a capped ridership based on population, where people are working and where people are going. So I think what we need to see to have any idea of where we demonstrate viability is by looking at that increased ridership. Because in my mind, and just to cut to the chase, anything that we do anywhere along this system, assuming that our goal is to build San Diego to San Francisco, which, by the way, I want to see. I want to see that high-speed rail system in my lifetime. I want to be able to go San Diego to San Francisco. But the way we get there is by increasing ridership kind of anywhere along that section, to where you have a large population saying, we're in on train. We're all taking the train to work. We're all taking the train when we go. And California, we demand that you give us that full system. Right? Until you have the ridership that starts to demand that people want to ride the train, you're never going to get the whole thing built, because it's just theoretical. So we have to do something that's going to increase ridership kind of in real time. And so that, to me, is what demonstrates the project. Not that we can run a train at 200 miles an hour. Running a train at 200 miles an hour that no one takes does the opposite of what we want. Right? If you really want to get investment, you have to show that people are going to buy the tickets. So that's what we need to see, is what investments do we make with high-speed rail dollars that increase ridership the most along that system, anywhere in that system, that shows an investor that people are willing to buy tickets on a train. So That's my point, and that's what we need to see in your analysis, I think, to really, you can't have a finding. You can't have a preliminary finding about where to spend this money until you know where ridership can be increased the most. So the fact that you even have a preliminary finding that has nothing on ridership shows me that you don't have a finding yet.
Well, I think the question is, how do we get to high-speed rail the fastest in the state of California? What's the mission of California High-Speed Rail Authority? And our understanding is that the mission is to provide a high-speed rail service between, in our Phase 1, or the valley-to-valley between Bakersfield and San Francisco. That's what we're focused on. So we're looking at, within that context, if you have the money available and you can move it anywhere within that valley-to-valley line or even the Phase 1 line, what's the best place to help you achieve your mission? And that's what we're looking at. And I would say one more thing quickly, and that is, in a quantitative phase, we will get into the ridership numbers and be able to provide those to you.
I have that. Okay. I think, see, you're thinking of it as an engineer, which is, how do we build the fastest train in the fastest amount of time, right? That's what an engineer would say. How do we take the money we have and build a train that goes really fast for the most distance? As a politician, I say, how do I make a train that gets more people onto it so that I can show my colleagues in the legislature that they should invest more money in trains? So I think it's a different way of thinking about it. And when I hear demonstrating viability, it's demonstrating that I can get a lot of people that right now are driving to decide instead to take a train. So just wanted to say that I think there's two different ways of what viability means here, and I think we need to be clear about that. There's the one that is the easiest train to build in the fastest amount of time, and then there's the one who actually gets people to change their behavior. And I don't think you change culture by demonstrating you can run a fast train. I think you change culture by giving people who need to get somewhere a way to get there quickly, and that's more convenient than driving. Okay.